Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on unlocking key change success factors for your organisational growth in 2024. We are in each other's company for the next 20 to 30 minutes, and I'm really excited to show how you can equip yourself with these critical success factors to steer your organisation towards successful change. My name is Sam Cooper. I'm the head of marketing here at Changing Social, and with me today I have my colleague and head of strategy and change, Ed Sheath, who you will meet in just a moment. And I'll also pop our emails in the chat for you now, so please do feel free to reach out to us, or if you have any questions post-webinar. A super quick note about housekeeping, in particular a couple of options that may help during this webinar. To enable live captions, click on the settings cog, then select captions/subtitles. Choose your language preference there. For questions, click the chat icon and hit ask a question. Type yours in and decide if you want to include your name or be anonymous, and then click on the little paper plane icon to send that across. And we will address questions towards the end as well. But for now, I will pass you over to Ed to get us started with today's session. Over to you, Ed.
Thanks very much, Sam. Good afternoon, good morning, happy lunchtime, depending on where you are in the world, as we head into an Easter break here in the UK, and some people are heading into a long weekend, others into a peaceful time without some of us online. Welcome. I do have one open question for the floor before we kick off. What's your favourite Easter egg? I think mine is strongly the mini eggs. We were in a bit of a debate this morning in the team. I think mini egg is the best, but apparently crunchy is coming in a firm second, which I was surprised about. But hey, we can eat Easter eggs at the weekend. Let's dive into the next 20-ish minutes of success factors when it comes to change management. If you haven't met me before or haven't been on one of the webinars that I've led, probably all the best for it. However, hopefully the next 10 to 15 minutes will change your mind if you haven't. So I've been at Changing Social for 2.5 years. Prior to that, a decade at Microsoft. I've had various roles, but the last it'd be more than that, 7.5 years in the change management space, specializing on Microsoft technology. Today is less about the technology and more about the critical success factors of change management. Now, we've got a few things to run through today. As you'll see, it's not a hugely packed agenda, but we do have the overview of success factors. We're going to dive into critical success factors and then talk about implementing them. It can often seem like a one and done task. However, there is a way of logging and managing these critical success factors, and there's a little bit of method behind the madness, and dare I say it, there is indeed an operating model that goes with it. You'll be pleased to hear there are actually only 6 content slides, so today will not be an overburden of PowerPoint given the time of day, and some people may or may not have had their recent caffeine injection. If there's any questions as we go along, please do throw them in. Sam will interject and raise his voice so that I can answer any in the chat as we go. If there's anything I don't know the answer to, I will circle back after the session. We've had a few thought-provoking ones recently, and I have opened up some conversational channels on both LinkedIn and over email with a few people before. So looking forward to that. If you haven't partaken in one of the webinars before, I may occasionally dish out points. Please keep a track of your points. At the end, you can cash them in for absolutely nothing. And it's key that you make sure you've got the right balance. So today, we are talking about critical success factors, or CSFs, as I've recently found out they are heavily abbreviated to in most of the literature in the last 4 years. We are keen for an acronym, so clearly that's caught on when it comes to critical success factors. Most of you will be familiar with KPIs as well, and we will touch on them towards the end of this session. And how do they interact with CSFs and what's the difference? So we'll talk about that as well. So a little bit more then. CSFs, or critical success factors, are the key elements that are in place to ensure we achieve our goal. Pretty generic sentence, but I'm conscious that these don't necessarily just apply to change. They can be around any project or program that you are running, and potentially even a higher level when it comes to organizational and business goals as well. However, if we take it one step further for ourselves in this particular context and conversation, we have a goal, a successful change management program for the insert change. Now, as I mentioned, we are a Microsoft 365 partner and we work closely with digital technologies in that space. However, this could be something you have on your plate around people or process or any other form of change. Therefore, everything you see today will be applicable across that. And if you've got anything outside of 365 or a specific change program on digital that you're working on, feel free to share it in the chat or post a question about it. It's always good to hear what other people have going on in their working lives. So why do we focus on it? There's a few things. And there's one point in here that for me is really important. Starting at the top. If we're not sure of what we need to focus on and what does success look like, it's really hard to aim for that goal. The goalposts will keep changing as you're moving down your project timeline. It might be hard to think what action is inferring what outcome, and are we on track for the goal that we've set ourselves? So it keeps our goalposts in line. We need to be conscious of our resources. How do we partition our time and money in an effective way, and the people that go with that, so that we A, reach the goal, but B, give the right focus to the right success factor at the right time. That's where we can start to look at that operating model and that method of logging and managing that we'll come to in a moment. Analyzing the success factor. Now, we've all been on projects where it suddenly changes, comes to a stop, gets rediverted. That's really key when it comes to the success factors. If we have to adapt and change as we go, we've got a log and a way of managing these so that we can effectively, dare I say, pivot to the right focus at the right time. These success factors should stay dynamic if required, but they're also there as a fallback so that we can sense check that we're achieving what we said we would. And then finally, that stay focused and prepared. Some of these projects last 3 weeks, hopefully, with the mixture of sticky notes, whiteboards, digital OneNotes, etc., we can stay on track, but sometimes things go a little awry and it's good to fall back if we've got 6, 12, 18, 36-month projects. Let's have a look then. 3 generalized overviews for these critical success factors. Is it essential to hit our goal? Now, I've done this exercise in a few clients recently. A whiteboard never goes amiss. An online chat, even a loop component. If you haven't played with Loop in 365, there's something you can go and play with after this session. What do we really need to focus on to make sure we're successful in change? And I've got a few examples listed out. When we think of the ProSci framework, Kotter's 8, etc., there are some recurring themes that we see. What must be in place for the highest chance of success when it comes to change? And those who've read the ProSci methodology or even got their certification in change or looked at YouTube or LinkedIn recently, you'll know that one of them is active and visible leadership. Will indeed make a showing today, so be ready for that one. But there are some other key things we can place in, and my list is by no means exhaustive. Scrutinize that factor. Take a moment, have a think amongst yourselves. When you start logging and managing your success factors, are they in keeping with the project's overall goal? And are they a success factor, or have they slid into a KPI? Now, we did mention key performance indicators earlier, and candidly, they can sometimes be a little confusing. What's a success factor? What's an indicator? Where do they sit? How do we manage the difference between them? So we'll touch on that towards the end, but scrutinizing that log of success factors will help you long term. And then finally, that log and manage. Now, the log and manage piece can be done in a multitude of ways. I've kept it as simple and as pragmatic as possible. I've seen it done in Viva Goals. If you haven't played with that, something else to take away and have a play with. I've also seen it done in a Loop component, OneNote, a whiteboard, and more recently, an actual agile board with sticky notes on the wall. Return to office scheme was going quite strong at that customer, and the use of pens and pencils had come back out. But the important thing is to keep them handy, to review them often, and to make sure, like I mentioned, the time and resource is being focused in the right area at the right time. Those who are keeping track, we're already 2 slides into only a 7-slide presentation. So let's move on to the slightly more focused element when it comes to that log, manage, and operation model. How do we implement it? How do we get it practical? How do we get it written down? And then, so what? With all this energy and effort into managing these critical success factors, so what? Immediately an eye chart straight in front of you, a lot to digest here, but I'll take you through it. You'll notice the lower half is grayed out. Those with keen eyes might understand why. If you have any suspicions why those bottom 3 are grayed out, throw them in the chat now, and we'll see who hits the mark. So, success factor, a shared vision for the change, and active and visible leadership. So those are some 2 fairly hefty and well-documented must-haves for any successful change program in any people, process, or technology change. You'll see a high-level description of this success factor, and let's just take that very top one, the shared vision. The program has a clearly defined vision linked to the business goals and/or objectives, and it supports AD. Those, again, who are familiar with the ProSci work, that would be awareness and desire. So by having that shared vision that is effectively managed and well presented to the business will support the awareness and desire of people going through any upcoming change. There's a few other bits that start to build on the back of that, which start to build out the ADKAR model as a whole. If you haven't heard of ADKAR, it's awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. Whack it into Google. If you have AI or ChatGPT or Copilot, feel free to ask it a quick summary and it will bring you up to speed pretty fast. That leads us to the following 3 columns. The importance of that success factor at the present time and the urgency to focus on it and get it right. You'll see we're at the very beginning of this change journey and example. So having that vision, which may not yet exist, is very important, and it's a very high urgency. Before we start progressing down this change, whatever it may be, we want to make sure we have that cohesive vision in place. We've got to start with the why. Simon Sinek's book around the why and how that drives people's behavior is really key, and that vision helps sew it all together. If you think of a standalone project that you may have been involved in or seen from the periphery, or a change that's been done to you, it can often be a case of, what is this? Why is it happening now? What does it mean for me? Do I particularly care? Should I care? That's where that vision piece comes in. It starts to tie people together of, interesting, here it comes. I understand why we're doing that, and I can see where it plays to A, my role, and B, the business all up, so I can start to partake in a clear understanding. So overall, that receives a score of 10. Great. That probably means we need to throw some time, money, and people at it, hence those little icons showing resource. You'll notice also that if it's a 7 or higher, it also needs attention. Now, it is technically an arbitrary score that is crafted between yourselves during the project spin-up and the ongoing review of CSFs, but that benchmark helps you stay on track of what should I be paying attention to right now, and what perhaps is coming up in the future that those time and money resources will be split across. Same for active and visible leadership. It's very well documented that without a clear, visible, and active sponsor, that most change programs struggle to reach their full potential and not necessarily realize the full benefits and value of that change. The urgency is 1 point lower. It is all very well having an eager and very primed sponsor. If the vision is not there for them to hang the change upon, it's going to be a harder sell, shall we say. So it's not quite as urgent as the shared vision, but there's no reason they can't happen in parallel, and that can be built up at the same time. Which leads us to these grayed out ones. And I haven't had a chance to glance in the chat. However, those who thought it's something later down the line, spot on. It is the factors that are likely to come up in the future, but are not key at this absolute time in the project. So I mentioned on the previous slide around maintaining these and reviewing them and scrutinizing them regularly. Now that might be once every 2 weeks for a short project. It might be once every month or quarter for a longer project where there's more moving parts and things don't necessarily accelerate at the same speed. So imagining we've fast forwarded by 3 to 4 months perhaps, and this has now continued as a change program. The shared vision and active and visible leadership are still important. They shouldn't ease off. They carry the same level of importance, but you'll notice the urgency has dropped to 1 because they are either being taken care of and or in place, or at this particular review point and this particular part of the project, they don't carry the same weight as the other CSFs or critical success factors. You'll notice they fall into a 6, not a 10 and a 9, which means they don't need attention now, but they still carry importance, and it's worth not forgetting about them, having them there and just graying them out for any reference in the background. It's not unusual that a project will need a reminder, and that sponsor can step up. And in a review, we might change this urgency back to a 5. That could be a change in a role. It could be an acquisition. It could be a number of factors that initial sponsor has stepped away or needs to step back and play a more active part in a part specific to the change. You'll notice the previous slide had lower numbers for these bottom 3. And that is representative of now we've moved on in that project and these are coming to the forefront of where we want to spend our time and attention. High employee engagement. You'll notice the ADKAR phrase is nearly complete there. We've got awareness, desire, knowledge and ability showing up in that bracket which says ADKAR, missing the R. The employee engagement is where people start to play an active role in their own change. And they understand the why, the what, the when, and the expectations from them in this change. That could be anything from a data migration move through to partaking in training, through to just making sure they're in the right place at the right time to receive a town hall update, and or perhaps even a new device. Importance is high. We always want to make sure employee engagement is high as possible. And right now in this particular part of the project, we're giving it a 4. It is really urgent, but we know that it's underway and there's some good traction. So that bumps it to a 9, which means we do want to invest our resources to this particular critical success factor. Same for reinforcement, and then just taking a skip down to iterative review and adaptation and adoption. So iterative review is what we're doing right. Is it correct right now? And do we need to adapt anything into the future? You'll see that first sentence. Ensuring no debt builds up. Ensuring no debt builds up. Now, I've taken the slight slant on this project that it's around digital. And we know that in a world of constant updates, the word evergreen is really key. If we fall behind, both as people and as a business, we will build up a level of technical debt. So if you haven't yet had an opportunity to play with AI, you're probably slightly behind the curve, and a little bit of technical debt and skill debt will start to pile up. And taking a jump in 2 years, if you're not familiar with AI in this example, will mean you've got to overcome quite a large step. So looking forward, this is currently a 6 on the critical success factor. Now that might be because we're just entering that initial change phase. People are starting to adopt new ways of working. We've got that learning portion of knowledge coming in. We're building on ability. So right now in this particular change, going into iterations and review and adaptation would disrupt it, and it would be the wrong time to focus. So it's scoring a 6, showing us that in the next month, 2 weeks, whatever our iteration for this management of CSFs is, it's likely to be important in the next time. So we can start to plan ahead a little bit. You'll also notice that that particular CSF does have K, A, and R, so knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. Once we fall into, in this particular example, a digital change, staying relevant is key. That means learning new knowledge, testing new skills, building ability, and then finally reinforcing that constant approach for success. There's 2 elements to that I'll touch on very quickly. You want to think about our individual success. We are part of any employee change that we are either leading or being part of, and staying current with our knowledge and ability, and then making sure we continue that through the reinforcement process. But also from an employee experience, if we're leading a change, that reinforcement is really around that encouragement. What are we helping people to focus on, showcase, and then reward and recognize? That can be as simple as a well done to this team for a fantastic new use of Copilot, all the way through to employee of the month for a new scenario that saved us an hour per department, for example, and a little bit of recognition being called out. So you'll see as the projects move forward, you may only have 5 critical success factors, but moving them forward and keeping that log gives you a snapshot to manage them over time. Highly recommend interrogating them. Is it important right now in this project? Is it going to be important in the future iteration of this project? And how urgent is this piece? If you've already got it covered, urgency can go down, and perhaps even the importance can come down a level because it's covered, everything's in place, we know we'll be successful. That drops you below the 7, fantastic. By the way, I have seen other scales used. I've seen 10 used. 5 for me, just from personal experience, 5 for me is an easier number to manage when it comes to multiples critical success factors. If you've got 15 success factors and you've set your threshold at 7 and you've got a bigger scale, it's going to be much harder to manage what is actually a priority and where do we put our focus, our resource, our time. That brings us neatly into one thing I mentioned at the start. Critical success factors versus KPIs. It can be tempting and, dare I say, easy to slip between the two. And I just wanted to bring a few things up on the screen to perhaps set some thought concepts for yourselves to take away. CSFs, I've pulled them from the previous slides. I've pulled them from that log that we try and maintain, shared vision, reinforcement, that iterative approach. And I've tried to partner them up with KPIs to demonstrate the slight nuance and difference between them. That first one, a shared vision. Have we been successful? Have we hit a key performance indicator to say, yes, we've done this? Well, we have it written, it's captured, and it's been communicated. So we can say, yep, brilliant. Shared vision, which is a critical success factor, has been met because we've hit the key performance indicator. And you can see a few other KPIs on the right-hand side. I think probably just one to call out, that high employee engagement. So are people being present? Are they partaking in the change? Has that active and visible leadership been successful? Well, a training turnout of 70% plus is certainly a good benchmark to set. I'd love to say 100%, but we all know annual leave, sickness, movers, leavers, etc. will impact any training plan over a long period of time. 70% of a large organization trained is certainly not a bad turnout. So something to bear in mind there. Set your KPIs in a realistic manner. Always aim higher, but let's keep ourselves on a realistic and achievable path. Only other piece to call out here is around that iterative and review and adaptation. So operating on the latest versions, keeping up to date, but also that reinforcement piece on continued behaviors. Those two last critical success factors do blend together in some cases, and making sure that we're demonstrating those continued behaviors through the organization is pretty key. With that being said, we just hit 25 minutes. So despite my best efforts of keeping it to 20 minutes for Q&A, thank you very much for your time and attention today. I hope something was at least a little thought-provoking and you got an opportunity to see an insight into change management critical success factors. Feel free to use any of the information you've seen on the slide. I'll slide across to the final thank you slide. And Sam, has there been any Q&A or questions sliding in that I can help with?
So no, actually, Ed, it's been a very quiet group today, but what I will do is I will slowly wrap up, and if anyone's got any sneaky questions to post, hopefully we can get to them right at the end of the session. Alternatively, if you do have any questions that you'd like to take offline, you can email myself or Ed with our email addresses in the chat now. So I think we can all agree that Ed has done a fantastic job at introducing the importance of effective change management. However, we do know that organisational change can be a daunting task. So if you would like to take advantage of an initial free call with our change management experts, you can do that by clicking the link in the chat, which will take you to a form. And please feel free to fill that in and we will reach out to you to see how we can support you. We do actually have a quick question. Someone's just said, may I see the last slide again? Which is a brilliant question, and I'm sure, Ed, we can do that.
I think we can probably do that. Yeah, so this was the last slide on critical success factors versus KPIs.
Yeah, so we can leave that up, Ed, as I close out now. But yes, there will be a recording of this session as well, which will be sent to you at some point this evening. So please do look out for that. So that concludes. Oh, we have had another question. It's in regard to the slides again.
Okay.
What I could do is I could also send out the slide deck as well. I'm sure that'll be easier for everyone instead of going back and just screenshotting. But anyway, that does conclude today's webinar. Thank you so much for your time today. And from myself and Ed, have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are. We hope you found this webinar useful, and thanks again for your time. Bye-bye.